What is happening, y'all? Welcome to another episode of PG Radio. On this episode of my podcast, I have Leo. How do you finish your name?
Ssemakula.
Ssemakula. I was very unsure because I had that written down on my phone. It's like two S's in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Where is his name from?
It's a Buganda name.
Buganda.
Yeah.
From Uganda.
Yes.
Very cool. So, and this is your dad's last name then? I'm
yes,
assuming.
correct.
Okay. So Leo runs an organization called Slant, New York City. Or is it just Slant?
Slant NYC.
Slant NYC,
That's what we go by.
Is, and correct me when I'm wrong because I do mess up introductions all the time. It's a media organization that aims at making the discourse in America less inflammatory.
That's correct.
You are some form of a opinion aggregator where you bring together people from a random array of fields and a random array of professions to come together and contribute to the discourse, bridging the gap in some sense between what people think is the case and what really is the case with respect to opinions. Am I correct?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a great introduction.
Okay, and my name is Prakhar Gupta. You've heard of me before. I'm just kidding. So, Leo, I am eternally fascinated by this venture. I remember we have met before when you were coming up, when you were giving birth to an idea for yourself in terms of a project that you'd want to undertake, and it was always along the similar lines of, you know, having discourse as its central theme and being able to communicate the essence of arguments instead of the strawmans of argument, which is also very similar to what we do at Colloquia. So I was very interested then, and then I saw the transition from some sort of a website. Is that what you were working on?
That's what we were working on initially. That's still very much on the table.
Right.
Although we are transitioning now and focusing more on web content.
Okay. And so this web content is more video based.
Yeah, it's video based.
So tell me, where did this idea come from?
A lot of places. Mainly just out of my frustration at the state of political discourse on a public level currently, and just really a sense of obligation to do something about it.
Is this infection particularly Columbia born? Is this like you saw some stuff at Columbia that you were not happy with, or is it the general American situation that you're not happy with?
I mean, both, for sure. I mean, we both go to Columbia. We both know how things work there.
Right.
But I wouldn't say that it's Columbia specific. There are things that I've seen online that are happening across the nation. And really just how political narratives are put together in the media.
Right.
That are a huge cause of concern for me.
Right. For an Indian, for somebody who's never exposed to the traditional forms of media in America, because by the time I moved to America, stuff had already gone onto YouTube and podcasts, and that's where I was getting my information from. I was in Chicago late July, and I remember sitting in a hotel, because I never get hotels otherwise. I'm usually a hostel backpacker kind of a hippie guy. You can probably guess by the man when I'm at. But I was sitting and I was changing channels, and suddenly I had CNN, and then the next channel was Fox, and I saw them reporting the same news from two different sides, and I was like,
right?
Yeah, I was like, so weird. This is absolutely so weird.
That's crazy, and yeah, it's great that you bring that up, because I'll describe what I find to be wrong with the current state of political discourse. What you have right now with the media and social media is a system that consistently churns out stories that purposefully make people fearful and angry, because that's what gets the clicks, that's what gets the ratings. And you know, that's pretty well known. I mean, people are aware of this, but what's not talked about enough really is just how irresponsible this kind of system is.
Right.
Because I mean, citizens of this country rely on those stories to
make sense.
To make sense of the world, and perhaps more importantly, to make political decisions. Right. So a question we all have to ask ourselves is, do we really want the people voting in the most powerful man or woman in the world to be whipped up into a frenzy of anxiety? And I mean, my answer would be no, as I'm sure yours would be too. So that's why I'm dedicated to finding ways to counteract that.
I'm always confused as to what nomenclature I should give this behavior, right? And I'm a fan of nomenclature. I don't know if you heard of Nicholas Nassim Taleb or Eric Weinstein.
I have not. No. I think I saw Eric Weinstein on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Eric Weinstein is one of my heroes. Eric, if you're listening to this, please contact me. But jokes apart, they're two people who like to dress concepts and phenomena up in names, and I'm a fan of that. And I have two very interesting names for them, and tell me which one you align with most. One is, I call it the marketing idea of communicating news. The other I call is the tabloid format of communicating news. So here is where they both come in. In the late 90s, I believe, when the whole Princess Diana, Prince Charles things was unraveling, Rupert Murdoch, who's an Australian media mogul, that's what they use, he started sending his newspaper, The Sun, after Princess Diana everywhere. Princess Diana's personal life was up in the air. And when Rupert Murdoch was asked in the British Parliament as to why you're doing this, he's like, I'm just giving the people what they want, right? On the other hand, the marketing idea is similar too. It's really like, this is what people will react to. I'm giving people entertainment. I'm giving them stimulus. This is what they want. And it makes me wonder two things, as a matter of fact. The first thing it makes me wonder is, on some weird, twisted, Freudian, psychoanalytical, unconscious level, we desire that conflict on a continual level. And the second thing that makes me wonder is, for people like you and me, people who are actively making an effort to bridge the gap, is that the sense-making apparatus of our times has failed tremendously because it is pushing out inconsistent ideas and beliefs non-stop. What do you think about the four things I just put on the tab?
Okay,
So
it's a lot to get through, but all very interesting. And I mean, to a certain extent, yes, this is the content that's churned out right now that, excites people, can be described as, fulfilling some kind of demand. But just because there's demand for something doesn't necessarily mean that that's what should be put out, right? And I personally believe that there are ways of giving people what they want without necessarily being irresponsible. And I kind of want to draw the line between tabloids and well, not necessarily that, but like between the tabloids and political news, right? And news on politics. I think if it's a public figure or if it's a celebrity, the tabloids work fine, right? And there's a lot to kind of parse through there, but I think you can kind of brush that aside as entertainment. But as soon as you have a kind of dynamic in place where you are agitating people constantly in a sphere that has like a very real effect on how history will unfold on like a political level, that's when it gets kind of dangerous.
Right. There's a difference between entertainment and news. There has to be.
Well, increasingly, there's less and less of a distinction. I think Trump and the Trump era of politics is like
it's a marker. It's a milestone in history where we might remember, look back at it and talk about all sort of disasters this has just led to.
Absolutely. And you can, and in a way, you can kind of blame the media for that. And you can kind of like blame the media for the state that we find ourselves in currently.
Right. Eric Weinstein, interestingly enough, talks about shocks to systems as a theory of redoing the way we consider our things, we work our things. And he says that in the recent past, America has had three big shocks. One of them was 9/11, the other was 2008 financial crisis, and the third of them was Trump being elected in some sense. And they all tend to become markers of culture that follow, right? So post 2001 is something else, post 2008 is something else, and post 2015, 16 is absolutely a different ballpark of understanding how the American culture is operated. But when you mentioned this distinction, and it helped me conceptualize the idea of the psychoanalytical drive that we have towards, this massively misrepresented news cycle kind of a fashion of media delivery that we have. It's the same thing. We like our heroes to rise up, this underdog that's going to be the David and the Goliath, suddenly at the top of Hollywood fame, and then we like to destroy them, right? We want to watch the fall.
There's an awesome South Park episode about that.
Really? South Park.
I forget the name now, but after this I'll look it up.
But what happens in the episode?
It basically touches on exactly what you described. It's like this. It's almost this like tribal desire to like build up the celebrity and then like
break it down.
Yeah.
It's oddly gratifying. In India we call it the page 3, and I think it's a British borrowed term. Tabloid is more like an American usage of the same expression.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So tell me, I was also talking about with you right before we switched on the mic about how your background plays into this, because it's interesting. You come from Uganda and Belarus.
Yes. One
part of your family is from Uganda, one's from Belarus, and you grew up there.
Yeah.
You moved to America only around the same time as I did, which was 2017.
Yes.
Why is it that you have not only committed yourself to American values in terms of a career prospect, but even confined yourself to an American, like, what is this thrust of motivation that you have for this project?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, firstly, I grew up in 2 separate dictatorships, so not the freest societies. And
Really?
oh yeah, surprisingly enough.
It turns out.
It turns out the dictatorship wasn't conducive to freedom.
Right.
But no, so I mean, America's always represented a level of freedom to me, and I think a lot of Americans who grew up here and this is all they've known don't necessarily appreciate how special all of this is. It really is special, and just the freedom to live your whole truth. And be as eccentric as you want to be is very rare. So I just feel the need to bolster those values that I think are to a certain extent the right values. Well, values that I believe in, and in whatever way I possibly can, I want to preserve them.
Okay. Very interesting. And you'd want to preserve them with your life and your time, with your energy and your money.
Absolutely, because I know how much they mean to me. I definitely know how much I enjoy being in this kind of environment where I'm intellectually free.
Right.
And I could not necessarily say the same thing in both Belarus and Uganda.
Right.
I mean, you can be intellectually free privately, but
Yep. You're very right. It's not no. It's called preference falsification in economics. Your private preferences and your public preferences are different.
Oh well.
Right.
I didn't know about the term, but that's pretty interesting.
This is Eric Weinstein too. I'm just getting to him, bro. I am following you, Mr. W. But let me hyper localize the context that you just gave. So instead of this intellectual freedom that you speak about in terms of America, let me just narrow it down to Colombia, because that's our home ground. That's our nest, yours and mine. What do you think about intellectual fair free ground being the case at Colombia?
Oof, that is it's a
controversial question.
It's a heavy question for sure. I definitely would say that there is there is a widely accepted narrative that you go against at your own risk, for sure. And if you approach that from not necessarily a position of belief, but just purely on inquiry, there's a lot to be said about that. But I think there definitely are spaces that you can navigate that don't necessarily
threaten your existence.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you guys at STOA are setting up a more formalized space that can happen.
Right. I want to get to the essence of what you do, but I think I might forget it, and I think it's very important that I communicate. I might forget what I'm going to say now, and I think it's very important that I communicate, because I truly don't think the founders of Colloquia, including myself and including all the other absolutely brilliant people that I am a part of in the team, ever saw what has happened to Colloquia and what will. And I don't think some of them even realize it now, because it's not the most obvious thing. Here's what I think we managed to do at Colloquia, and then I want to ask you how you plan on doing something akin to that, something similar to that.
Great.
I think we have managed to, on a very, very small scale, managed to absolutely democratize not absolutely, but massively democratize the process of intellectual discussion. We've created this potluck buffet model of things where you don't need to have an opinion. You might just have 3 lines of the hexagon that you have with 6 lines. You might have a decagon of 10 lines, but you have only 3 lines, 3 points in there. And you come to the table, and everybody else brings their 3-line decagons, and you, with that, construct a potluck where you fill the table up with the different varieties of food everybody has.
It's a great analogy.
And then you can take whatever the heck you want with you back home. No questions asked, no compliance needed. And it's done in a way where you can absolutely suspend your individual belief. So with the same decagon I have a negative image of that decagon on a mirror, which is like the opposite view to which I hold. And even with that, I have to say 4 out of the 10 lines I need. And so you can place that on the table for somebody else as well. We managed to create truly an absolutely amazing exchange of ideas without creating the element of social compliance in the room. Or we have tried. How is it that Slant approaches this concept of discourse, political discourse?
That's great. I'll tell you. So we're basically championing a new way of covering political discourse on a public level. That's outside of punditry, outside of the hysteria of the political commentators. So about 2 months ago, we started filming a video series called The People Speak, where we approach pedestrians in public spaces and ask them to give us their opinion on political events or issues. And, that's been pretty insightful. I definitely have learned quite a bit for myself, still learning because the series is still going on. But really the intent behind the series was to, show our viewers and ideally America, that most people aren't militant political activists, like CNN or Fox would have you believe. They're regular people trying to get by, like most people, and they just have some opinions. They're not the super inflammatory commentator that the news will have on to boost ratings,
or what Twitter will show you, or what Facebook will show you.
Absolutely. They're not those are outliers. Most people are strawmans of their side, right? You know the term strawman? I'm not familiar.
Strawmanning is the art of putting your argument out in a way that where I take the weakest form of your argument, right?
Right.
So like the progressive narrative is strawmanned with effect when people speak. Of what you see on Twitter is a strawman of the progressive argument.
Gotcha.
What you see of the right-wing activists on Twitter is the strawman of the right-wing argument.
For sure.
Right? I think center-right and center-left is really where the discussion, the more substantial discussion for values is at.
And, also the least anxiety-inducing, right? The least combative. And, that's what we're really trying to highlight with our series. That, even if someone has a different political perspective than you, for the most part, they're more similar than they are different. And that's really what we're trying to demonstrate, and that's one thing we're working on. And another thing that we're working on that I'm very excited about is another video series called Movements of America. And we're still approaching political discourse from a very individual human level, although we're not approaching just anyone on the street. We're reaching out to representatives of political or politically involved organizations, and we're just going to be following them around, finding out who they are as people, what they do on a daily basis, and really kind of get to the root of why they believe what they believe. Like what happened in their lives that pushed them to represent this group. And that's going to be really cool because I think on one level it'll demystify certain organizations that we see on the news, right? So the reason why Franco, the wizard behind the camera,
dude, Franco, we miss you here.
I miss you, Franco.
Yeah.
Sorry you couldn't be here.
Shout out,
shout out Franco
from NYU. Yes.
Yes. The reason he couldn't be here is because he's actually filming footage for our first episode with Planned Parenthood. So, for example, what drives people to work for Planned Parenthood and push their agenda forward, and what we're trying to demonstrate, and what will be clear as soon as we start putting content out is that these aren't the super villain-esque groups that
the media puts out.
Yeah, exactly. They're just they're regular people who've organized and are trying to make the world a better place how they see fit, based on what they've seen in their own lives, based on the worries and the hopes that they have for the future, which are no different from most people's.
Right.
And that's really what we're trying to capture with Slant, just the commonality between people. And I think our format is great for that because it's, in a sense, it's just regular people engaging with each other without the anonymity of the internet. You're not distilling someone to their two-dimensional essence. They have a Twitter and
it's 280 characters and a picture.
Yeah, and that's what you're going off. This is a person you know, who got off of work and, you know, is tired or, you know, just went for a jog, you know, like regular people living their lives. We really just want to bring, you know, just humanize the discourse once again.
I read a paper on freedom, liberty, political freedom, and so on over the summer for a class that I was taking, and I feel like that paper was such a phenomenal point for me in terms of understanding some of the more interesting aspects of the political spectrum. And here is how that happened, right? I think the samurais of the extreme, the people who are swords and guns ready for battle on the extreme ends,
right?
They forget that the very reason why liberty was fought for so long, the very reason why Hegel's end of history is still so far away, is because we did not fight to be right. We fought to be free. Most of the people really do not even have the extent of political opinions. They really don't want to like, the true freedom is to not be bothered about politics at all. True freedom is not to be bothered at all. So I don't care is what the right response to politics is the ideal response to politics.
I'm not sure about that.
Not right now. I mean in a philosophical eventuality, right? Where systems work in a way where I don't have to care for them. I can go about doing my own job. What do you think about that?
It's very interesting. I wish that could be the case. I'm not too sure whether that could ever be a reality. I think that, because I think, you know, political systems have to evolve to meet the needs of the time. And, you know, whatever they may be. It could be social, economic, whatever the case. And I think that requires a constant engagement between people. And I think that you could expand on that because it's very interesting, and I wonder how that would work. But I think that political systems have to be continuously reevaluated over time, and that requires caring and talking about them.
That requires a dialectic.
Yeah, and requires individuals who are consistently involved in the process. Although I wish that we could just, you know, never worry about politics ever, and like just do what we feel like every moment of every day. But you know, political systems are just how we relate to each other and how we negotiate living in the same space and negotiating our behavior amongst one another. So I don't know whether we could ever do without that.
I think again, of course, biologically not possible, sociologically not possible, and so on and whatnot. But then there is this philosophical dream that I sort of garden in my own self, which is in which I think politics is very much like chasing your own tail, when what you need to be doing is either running forward or backward. So this is what I think. I think the true pursuit of human beings in this time and era in an ideal world is either what is out there or what is in here. What is this consciousness? Where is the history of humanity? Where are we coming from? Like, answering those questions. I think the true enterprise humans have is understanding. What politics is a system that facilitates that understanding in a peaceful fashion.
For sure.
But when we get too engaged with politics, we end up just chasing our tail and never getting to the questions at hand. Now, if there's politics in the physics department, 100 years, 120 years since Schrodinger wrote his wave equations for quantum, we still haven't known what the nature of reality is. We've been in a question mark with what is the nature of reality.
I get what you're saying, right? and I do agree with that. I do agree with that.
Of course, that's a tangent for as far as your purpose is concerned. You are trying for us to not chase our tail. You're like, let's calm down about this aggressive chasing our tail. That
absolutely, I definitely do think that perhaps politics is too pervasive in a lot of aspects of our lives, and I think that it does lead to that kind of dynamic where we're chasing our own tails. Because I mean, certain intellectual pursuits might be held back because of political motivations.
Right.
And
imagine if all the neurons in the world were online into thinking about quantum physics. Do you think, that's why we're waiting for AI to emerge. That is undeterred by political idea. That is undeterred by...
So that's a little scary that it's undeterred. But that's
actually, it's a little comforting too in my head.
Is it?
No emotions, no need to kill. There is no mortality fear. There is no emotions.
Interesting.
No need to kill. But that's just how.
That's for another podcast.
Right. Yeah. I want to ask you particularly, what is slanting about Slant? Why the name Slant?
Slant. I mean, it's kind of hilarious.
Y'all were high.
No.
College dorms.
No, Mom, we weren't high.
Oh, my mom too. We weren't high. I forget.
No. We're thinking about names, and we're talking about people's political slants and how you wanted to put a spotlight on them, and perhaps display how they weren't as extreme for the most part as people would have you believe, and Slant NYC has a nice ring to it. Right. So
also, you probably might be able to add this little part. You can say that in the process of doing Slant, we realized that the slope wasn't as steep as we thought it was.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Like that's what you're going for. The slope isn't as steep.
Can I hire you as part of our marketing team?
Can you find me somebody who do my marketing instead, and we can work this out? I get good one-liners because I used to be a poet at one time. That's all I'd say.
Oh, yes.
That's all I'd say.
Yes.
That's very interesting. So, tell me, and this is sort of a harsh question. It's intended to be a harsh question because it's sort of parsing out an idea that might be sub-moral to even put out. But I'm going to take the risk regardless.
I'm ready.
Do you think everyone's opinion has a place? Because everyone does not do their homework before making an opinion. Why must you have the right if you don't have the conjugate responsibility?
No, I love that question. I love that. And I think about that a lot. I think everyone has the right to an opinion. And it kind of relates to what I was talking about earlier. Because, well, you'd want doctors or engineers to have to pass a certain bar before they're able to carry out their responsibilities, right? So you'd want someone performing surgery to have gone through medical school and be experienced, and you want someone who's building a bridge that millions of people are going to use to be qualified. But I think there's a real risk in the political sphere for brushing people aside and saying that they don't have the right to an opinion because they aren't well educated or well read on specific issues. Primarily because, again, politics is just a means for us to relate to each other, and it's a negotiation of how we're all going to behave towards one another.
Politics is society plus deception.
Plus deception.
Where deception is fair game.
I don't know what I think about that. I tend to have a more I tend to have a more optimistic view. There is always deception in politics, I feel.
Right.
But I think that the less the better.
Of course.
For sure.
Let me rephrase the question I asked you, because I agree with what you're saying, and I think I'll be able to...
I just want to finish up that thought. So really, politics will affect how everyone organizes their lives to a certain extent. And I believe that everyone inherently has a right to organize their lives as they see fit. So I think if you brush people aside and say, we're not going to value what you're saying because what you believe is contrary to the greater good, it's a very dangerous dynamic that you're setting up, because all of a sudden you have individuals who get to dictate what everyone else will do without any scrutiny.
Absolutely, and I agree. I totally I'm behind that motion on a personal level and on an intellectual level. But let me rephrase this to elevate this issue and make it more refined, right?
Okay.
Here's what I think. We've managed to find a way to embed rights in our legal framework. We've managed to find a way to embed rights in our compliance framework, right? We can offer rights to people. However, we haven't managed to find a way to embed responsibilities in the legal framework, right? So as an American, your only civil responsibility or your civil duty is the jury duty.
Yeah.
In India, we have a conjugate amount of basic fundamental rights and fundamental duties, but we still haven't managed to do that for the political realm. And here is how I mean it. If my opinion by any medium, be that the loudness of my voice, the number in my bank account, any of that, if my voice is to be heard and is to be heard on an influential level, how do we make sure that voice has a certain scrutiny behind that? Right? How do I make sure that the rights that are exercised are in due process with the responsibility that come behind that? What do you think about that?
I think it's a very interesting idea, for sure. And I definitely do think that everyone is responsible for upholding a system that allows them to have certain rights. Even though I'm not from here, I still feel responsible to do whatever I can to uphold the liberties that I believe in. So I definitely do think perhaps there needs to be a greater call for responsibility,
right,
in America for upholding the values.
Right. I think the incongruence there is that rights are legally provided, while responsibilities are supposed to be self-assumed, and we haven't found a hack to that.
Yeah, and that's it's a fine line, right? Because you don't want to again prescribe
responsibilities. It's a dangerous place,
and especially in America. I mean, the whole a big part of the national consciousness is
freedom and liberty.
Yeah, and a fundamental aversion to working with the government, right?
The government is the evil.
Yeah, we can see this manifest in, the healthcare debate, for example, and I completely understand. I completely again, having grown up between two different dictatorships, I can wholeheartedly empathize with a certain level of apprehension over allowing yourself to be told what to do by the government, because I know how much that
fucks up things.
It sucks.
Right.
It sucks. But a balance needs to be found. I'm not an absolutist in any sense, and I think that the right answers are rarely
at the end
two-dimensional, and and rarely at the ends.
The truth,
there's somewhere in the
Phil
middle.
Says, my friend Phil says the truth is always somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Right, and that's why I call the extremist. I call them extreme samurais, because they're always willing to fight. They're always willing to and uphold it in a sense of honor.
I like that. I'm going to start using that.
Please borrow all my terminology, make it famous, make me famous. But tell me about this, okay? On the issue of balance. What do you think is the balance between the personal and the political? To what degree is the personal responsible for being political, or to what degree is the call of action for the person to be political? When can I recluse myself from the political? What are your views on that subject?
That is a very tough question.
I know.
I don't.
We'll work it out together.
Yeah, I don't know whether I have a definitive answer, but I would say that I think it varies based on the time. Like you said, right? Like currently, people are definitely a lot more involved in the political process, and perhaps the time calls for it. But I do agree that perhaps the most ideal setup is an environment where you can focus as much as possible on your own pursuits and your own ideas or visions of freedom or pleasure.
Right.
And and that's really what I think of it.
Right. So I was reading up a paper by Aristotle, and then with Benjamin Constant, who was a French philosopher after the post-French Revolution age, and we were comparing the level of freedoms back then, and this is how. So during the ancient Athens, during when Aristotle was alive, being a citizen meant exercising political rights, exercising political freedom. You had to be. For the sake of being a citizen, you were somebody, because everything else was managed by traders and slaves and whatnot, right? So only the upper echelon got the opportunity to exercise political rights, and so you had to be involved in the stores. You had to be involved in the discussions. You had to be in the public square to speak about it. Only then are you a citizen. It's a circular 1:1 relationship where citizen, political discussion, citizen kind of a thing.
Very interesting.
Right? However,
so I'm guessing that was very limited, right? Only a limited amount of people
only a
would be...
slight sliver of people got that.
Okay.
But then when we came to the post-French Revolution era, we was like, listen, we want the kind of a political system where the person does not have to be political, right? What we want is the liberty from exercising political freedom. That is true liberty. The liberty from all responsibility is true liberty. Where and it sort of, I was like, that's such an interesting swing of things, and it makes me wonder, because I was militantly political, not militantly political in the sense where you were wrong, where I was like, I want to do something for the political future of my country or the area that I belong to, be that America, be that India, be that whatever part of the world.
I can empathize with that.
But then I was like, I don't know, man. I think I want to be free, and that means being free from this constant itch, this constant
For sure.
anxiety.
And and that really goes back to what we were talking about just now about the balance between rights and responsibilities.
Have you ever come across people interviewing where they're like, listen, we don't want to comment on politics, it's too tiring?
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, it's kind of surprising how many people are willing to talk to us. The stereotype is the apathetic American who doesn't care about politics. But it was great to find so many people willing to talk to us. Although there certainly are a large number of people who are like, hey, we don't have an opinion. I don't care about this enough. We have come across them. And you know what? I don't mind that they don't, to a certain extent, because that falls in line with my idea of freedom, right? I believe that people should have the right to say, hey,
I don't care.
I don't care. But I do think that there perhaps needs to be a bare minimum
of
consciousness and political action. I think it's completely irresponsible to
denounce
entire,
absolutely.
Yes, right. Because I mean that then negates reality. That then is saying that it's glossing over the fact that all of this works and will continue to work if we continuously negotiate the terms of our collective existence with one another. And that can only function if we're all involved. So I guess really it's all about figuring out what the bare minimum is. And perhaps that's a conversation that needs to be had. Like, what's the bare minimum amount of
political consciousness that you must have?
Yes.
That's a very interesting topic. What is the bare minimum amount that you should be concerned with?
Yes.
Because that sort of bleeds me into one of the things we discussed when we met like earlier this week as well. And I think that is the fatal flaw, or let me put it this way. I think representative democracy as we know it across the world has, in my view, very recently, it has come to my notice that there might be a monopoly on the idea of democracy. So I put out a model of democracy with respect to colloquy, albeit absolutely unscalable at this point and very, very limited. And it has a very conscious involvement for its functioning, and it's over only a 1.5 hour period a week, and all of those limited constraint factors. But it's a different form of a democracy. I think representative democracy has a mathematical flaw embedded in its system. And the flaw is that of cost-benefit analyses, right? Imagine there is n number of participants in a representative democracy, and there is x number of issues in a x amount of work, right? The total cost of that nation is n into x. N members have to do x amount of homework, while the power is 1 by n.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really like that analogy.
Right?
I really like the way you broke it down. That's a very real problem, and perhaps explains why there's so much apathy that occurs right now.
Absolutely. I don't know how to do that. I'm not smart enough, right? But the job of philosophy is to show us that the part of the question might be the problem itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, man, because you have a nation of, 357 million people, is it, right now? How do you get everyone to have a unified vision of the future, right? How do you get everyone to cooperate?
Without being communist China.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's
without, like, whipping people into shape, right? Having them, like, willingly cooperate, that's tough. And is that possible? Like, on a biological level? Like, are we hardwired to be able to cooperate with 350 million other people?
Right.
I don't know, and maybe the answer I'm kind of toying with at the moment is just breaking it down to smaller and smaller units, right? If you have governance on a smaller level, and perhaps set up a network. I mean, that's kind of the whole idea behind states having their own rights to govern as they see fit. I think that's a great idea, and I think that perhaps needs to be revisited now, especially with social media connecting us all on a very like unified level. We tend to we don't look at what's going on in our cities anymore, or even in our like neighborhoods, right? Or like what's going on with our neighbors. It's more so what's going on with the world, right? What's going on in the global community,
the global village.
Yes,
right.
and I think that one might be conducive to stagnation, because you deal with problems that are so large that they might as well, you might as well throw your arms up in the air and say, you know what, I'm not going to deal with these.
It's very easy to tap out in face of that.
Yeah, and it also like depersonalizes the problems. So I definitely do believe in it. And I guess you can see how that philosophy would tie into Slant, right? Bring everything back down to a human level.
To the binary.
Yeah.
To the human binary, not the opinion binary.
Yeah, so just let's look at what's around us, right? Let's, on a very like real level. And yeah, I don't know how functional that would be. I'm not a politician. I'm 20 years old. What do I know about how a country should be run? But I mean, that's how I look at things now.
I have two thoughts to that. Okay, two very tangential thoughts.
Right.
First, I think I see a new way in which the personal and the political can dance together in a romance. And that is a communist China model. And we were just talking about it right before.
Yeah.
What China does is what you were talking about, this tribal coordination, whether manageable or not. What if the entire entity was one organism? What if the entire political was one person, right? So I could give a minute amount of pain for delayed gratification to the person, which is not possible in any other democracy. I cannot say willingly, with all my enlightenment reasoning behind my back, that I can punish the Kashmiris right now for the integration of India as a whole. I cannot say I want to punish Alabama with whatever form or fashion, or Flint, Michigan, for the pharmaceuticals that gets circulated to the rest of the country. That's just not how democracy with the Enlightenment rationale works. But China can be like, we can punish Hong Kong right now for the integration of China as a whole. You see what I mean? It's like, I will take the pain here in my bicep for my body to be functional as a whole in the future, right? Like this immediate pain, localized immediate pain for the long-term benefit of myself.
For sure.
It's inverted in democracy. You cannot do that without being questioned, without having this introspection.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. But I don't know what I'm always hesitant to buy into the greater good kind of framework.
Yep.
Because one, who decides what's the greater good?
Right.
Greater good for who? And I think that kind of way of political organization is just counter to freedom. And I think it's a very slippery slope. And again, like I said before, I don't buy into absolutes, but I think when certain things do need to kind of follow that, like education, for example. I think it's in everyone's interest to have like a well-educated populace. But with most things, I think it's best to leave people to their own devices. And
the second thing that came to my mind was there's this ex-Navy SEAL who has his own podcast called Jocko Willink. I don't know if you've heard of Jocko.
I haven't.
Right, Jocko's very interesting. Jocko wrote a book called Extreme Ownership. He's a leadership guru. And from there, I'll check him out. Once he wrote Extreme Leadership, he was like, whoa. Then he wrote a book called The Dichotomy of Leadership, where he sort of places the factual with the counterfactual when it comes to leadership. So when you say, I'm 20 years of age, what do I know? But on the same hand, you say, I'm 20 years of age, I need to start taking responsibility for my surroundings, right? It's like there is always two pulling forces in opposite direction that you might have. If you take too much responsibility, if you start thinking you know the best for not just for yourself but everybody around you, are walking down a dictatorial path. Right?
Yes.
If you're like, I don't know anything, you become an anarchist. Right? Yeah. And so you have to find this within the dichotomy, within the dialectical, find this middle path for yourself, right? But
I think it's important that you have the freedom to be able to work that out for yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I am all for that. But which reminds me, and I want to get to, I would have gotten to that once we were talking about content and branding for your whole thing. I think you should start a podcast for yourself as well.
Oh.
That's I mean, voice.
Oh, you're too kind, Prakar.
Apart from that, it's a better medium of putting your ideas out while you continue doing everything that you've been doing.
I mean, I'm open to the idea for sure. If we can, talk to the team, maybe figure something out.
I can help you out with the basics as well.
Oh, I appreciate that.
As long as you have fun doing this today.
This is great time.
Okay, goodbye.
This is great, and honestly, we're always looking for new ways to
reach
out of champion our vision, right? So whatever form that may take. We'll see.
Right. Here is my next question. What is the content that you've come across in the process of taking Slant somewhere? Like, what is the kind of opinions you've come across? What do you do?
A wide range of them. I mean, like I said before, like a key insight that I gained is just how willing people are to speak and how ready they are with their opinions, right? Like, they truly do think about this stuff in their free time. You can tell. We've covered a bunch of topics. We covered climate change, reparations for slavery. That was a particularly
charged.
Very, very charged. And we decided to go to Harlem, Marcus Garvey Park, and reach out to the African American community there to see what they think. That was very interesting.
What'd you find? Were all of them pro reparations?
Yeah. They believe that reparations were something that were that should happen. But it wasn't this militant perspective that you'll see on the news, right? It was they were parsing through that question on like a very rational, sane level, where they didn't. There's this lady, I forget her name now. She was great, and she was really just talking about the disparity in resources between certain communities. She was a mother in Harlem who had to send her kids to a different neighborhood to go to school because she wanted a better future for them. And
that's hard, man.
Yeah,
that's very hard.
Yeah. So, and that's all that she was really complaining about. She said, we don't want $1,000 deposited in our account. We want just societal changes, and we want the government to invest in our communities. So again, it's very rational thoughts that are going on here. Like no one's super crazy about anything. Same thing with climate change.
Before
same thing with gun control.
Change, what do you think is the crazy when it comes to reparations? What do you think is the crazy form of the reparation argument?
Well, anything that would perhaps call for the burning down of the White House, or what do
you think about me putting my Venmo up on my Instagram, telling people, hey, Venmo me for $5 to $50 for you being white and me being black?
Is that something that's happened?
I saw that.
Crazy. Was that a
Columbia student?
Oh wow. Was that like a genuine thing? Was it a joke? I mean, that's kind of crazy, and I don't know what the context there was. Maybe they were just being kind of ironic, and
maybe they were. I hope they are, but like.
Yeah. But that would kind of fall under the category of just a little over the top,
right?
Especially because while me and you might be able to look at that and say like, hey, maybe it was ironic, maybe it's not. Someone else might look at that and be completely put off by it. And I think that's dangerous.
And I also, the grander point that I was trying to drive with all of this, I do not disagree that there is a massive inequality in America.
For sure. There's no denying that.
And it's localized around race and community to a great degree, and neighborhoods to a great degree. But if you can afford being at Columbia, or even the loan for Columbia, for you to ask for $5 on Venmo and $50, that makes me sort of want to be like, I don't know if that is it's the intersectionality of race and privilege there, right?
Absolutely. And I struggle to kind of fall in an opinion for that.
I reserve myself, man, because I'm not black or white. I don't know. I don't have the history of this country.
It's interesting because walking through America, I'm a black male, right? That's what people see. That being said, I'm from East Africa, so my family history is very different from that of a typical African American, right? So I didn't necessarily feel the same kind of trauma that descendants of slaves would. So there's one thing, and again, culturally, I'm very different, and especially since I'm also from Belarus, that plays into it. But that's kind of an aside.
How does that work out in Uganda? Because I'm considering you were light skinned for
Uganda. I mean, in Uganda, I'm white.
I was going to say.
I have green eyes. People look at me.
He's a beautiful man. In case somebody is listening to us, he's a beautiful man. That's what he's saying.
is too kind.
I like to flatter my guests.
I love it.
Never forget me.
Please keep going. But no, so yeah, the term is Muzungu in Luganda, and
It's an inflammatory term. It's a
no, I won't call it that. Like it's not
It's a label.
necessarily.
That's it. It's
yeah,
a neutral label.
It's not meant to be offensive. No, and
Muzungu.
yeah, and now what it's kind of turned into is more of like a term for foreigner than it is just for a white
Likewise,
person.
the word is Gora in Hindi.
Yeah,
Gora started off as Gora means fairer, white.
Yeah.
But now it's like you were a Gora to me.
Yeah.
You know.
So yeah, that's what it's kind of evolved into. And yeah, but when I go to Belarus, for example, like I'm considered black, right? I'm considered an African. So it's my experience with race has been very fragmented, kind of crazy, and
Yeah.
you know it's just given me, I guess, like a unique perspective.
Yeah,
it's
I
like
was gonna say, what is your home?
What is my home?
Yeah, like
What is my home? I mean, both places. You know, like even though, you know, even though
If you are
perhaps
the
even though perhaps I don't fit in perfectly in either of those places, I still feel a strong connection to both of them, and they've both made me who I am. And you know, I've met like incredibly beautiful people in both, and people who showed me nothing but kindness. So
I appreciate the gratitude.
Yeah.
That's massive. If anybody's listening to this, that this gratitude is the hack that you need to your psychology and your biology. This is what keeps you going, man. And I mean that on a very epigenetical level. There is a researcher called Dr. Joe Dispenza and his colleague Dr. Bruce Lipton, and they research on epigenetics, and they've found some phenomenal stuff with respect to gratitude, thought, observation, and epigenetic expressions.
Yeah.
You can change your genes with gratitude.
Crazy.
Imagine that.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna practice that more.
You should look into him. He's
Wow.
been on
Yeah, I
Rogan
will.
and all of those places as well.
I will. No, that's. I mean, on a bit, at a very basic level, it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
We could say that's the level that
for sure.
that I will understand it at. But yeah, so home is both places for sure.
What have you found with other issues, climate change and Planned Parenthood? What have you found?
You know, the same thing, really. Like people are just, we all share, like I said, similar anxieties and hopes for the future and about the future. And you know, we really are just trying to get by and secure a reasonable future. That's really it.
Do you not feel like the content that you're making, the stuff that you're doing, puts you in this very unique place where the only way you can leverage this capital into fame and success, or for that matter reach, if that is your metric of success, right? How many people would have to emerge from an existing perversion? And here's what I mean by that. It's not naturally appealing. To hear moderation is not naturally appealing to us, hence Twitter.
Why would you say that? I mean, I tend to think that the people would want something that's more balanced. I think
for now.
I think a lot of people are kind of craving a more like down to earth kind of coverage. And
it is only the politically conscious people. So I think that's why colloquia works within the university confines.
I don't know, and I think perhaps even if people aren't necessarily conscious of the fact that, you know, that's what they're looking for, I think as soon as they start engaging with our content, they'll start seeing the benefit of it. And we really are going to try our very best to kind of communicate our value and kind of communicate why what we're doing is, you know, I think everyone kind of deserves to have a more level view of the world.
True.
And, you know, a more sane view of the world.
True.
And I personally believe that people are looking for it. So I don't necessarily think we have to buy into the kind of hysteria. We're counter that. We're going against the hysteria.
Here's how I'd put it, okay? There is two existing models of being successful as far as your area, in my view, goes, right?
For
There's
sure.
the Facebook, Twitter, and CNN, MSNBC, and Fox model, which is create hysteria, throw shit out, which is something you don't do. And then there's the Humans of New York thing, which works on moderation, right? Which works on grounding humanity in humanity, right?
For sure.
This is how human this person is, right? Now, the trick with this is, I think you fall in the later camp.
For sure.
You would be the political humans of New York in some sense, right?
Yeah, in a way, that's what we are.
But anybody else who's
our-
tried to do humans of so-and-so, so-and-so, a lot of them have defected to this side. Because this side is at the base, at the biological level, more appealing to people.
Yeah.
So, how is it that you plan on getting people to be interested in your stuff? How do you plan on reaching people out?
Well, one, we're gonna be traveling. We're gonna be going to all these places. I mean, we're starting off in New York. But we eventually want to travel around the East Coast to start with, really engage with people on the ground, and then depending on how things go, travel elsewhere in America. Like, we really do want to. I mean, we're called Slant NYC, but we want to go nationwide. It's really the idea.
If you ever need a conversationalist, you know who to contact.
Yeah, for sure.
I can talk forever.
We will.
Believe me.
And so there's one approach that we're gonna take, and two, we're just gonna generate great content, and we're gonna keep finding ways to kind of really get at the root of why people believe what they believe, and just really tell human stories. And I think those are appealing. I really do believe that America, and to a certain extent, like, the world is just yearning for
this moderation.
Yes, political moderation perhaps, but just, this sense of unity, right? This sense of like a collective,
this absence
journey.
of anxiety in the face of humanity, right? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, because there's a lot to be anxious about in the world, but there's also just a lot to be thankful for. Back to the gratitude.
Oh, absolutely, you're absolutely right.
And I think that it's we are living in a crazy time, but there's a lot that, I mean, just think about how far we've come over the past 5 decades, right? A lot of progress has been made. So
here's another notion for you. I divided the camp into the Foxes and the Facebooks on one end, and then the Humans of New York on the other end. But there is a synthesis to this dialectic, which is the Who is America. Have you seen the TV show?
No. Is that Sacha Baron Cohen?
Yep.
That's not on Netflix, is it? It's on, like, is it HBO?
I'm not sure. You'll find it somewhere.
I'll look into it.
My brother, that show is a fucking feat of genius. This is what Colloquia, this is what Slant, this is what all the other centrists, everybody.
I have to watch it now.
And Sacha Baron Cohen capitalized on it brilliantly. Here's what he did.
What's the premise?
Okay, here's what he did. He peddled the hysteria from Camp 1 using the model of Camp 2. So here's how he did that. He plays 5-6 different characters, very, very charged characters. An Israeli army man who's extremely pro-gun, a professor who's hyper-liberal who apologizes because he's white every time he says something, and he brings out the worst in people he meets. So he will become that professor, go to a Republican house, and he'll be like, I let my daughter free bleed when she's on her period on the flag of America, and we realize that becomes the flag of China, and these guys are just like, what the fuck did you just say? He's like, I have cameras, and like
crazy,
and he peddles all this hysteria in a very human format, with humor in a way that's unparalleled, my friend. He made
Sacha Baron Cohen's a genius.
My man,
He's
Sacha Baron Cohen is my favorite. When I saw that show,
great.
I was like, I don't believe this. I think this is all scripted. He made the state representative from Georgia shout the N-word out on TV.
Oh wow!
You've seen that clip?
I think I've seen that, and I think I saw him talk about that on a talk show. Yeah,
Jimmy Fallon or something.
Yes, I think.
And he's like. There is one word in America that if you say, it gets attention. Say, now the terrorists are... I'm doing a bad job at the Israeli accent. If they're attacking you, what is the word? And this guy starts shouting the N-word. He's like, no, shut up. That's disgusting. The word is nuni. And he just diffuses that tension. In such
I need to watch that.
My man, you would love that.
I need to watch that.
You would love that.
I'm gonna look it up.
Fuck. Who is America? Sacha Baron Cohen.
Okay, for sure. And just on a tangent, one of my favorite questions to ask people was, what does it mean to be an American? Got some great responses for that. And that, I guess to a certain extent, that's a question that we're continuously trying to find out with Slant. Like what are people doing on the ground, like every day, right? Like what is like the defining
identity markers of Americans?
Right. And what's gonna bind everyone together? Like I definitely do feel like there is a strong need for more unity.
And so what have you found? What are the general contours that you can pull out?
In terms of what connects people.
Yeah, what is it being American for people in America? Is there
the definition changes based on who you ask, and based on the kind of cards they've been dealt.
Except liberty, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. Have you found
Some people will go so far as to say that those three things that you mentioned don't
exist anymore?
Don't exist, and like never did for a certain segment of the population, which is understandable.
Did you know why they have the word pursuit of happiness in the freedom of Declaration of Freedom?
Something to do with, was it initially
right to own property?
Right to own property.
But they had to remove it because they had to include the black man minority. So they were like, pursuit to happiness is fine.
Crazy.
Right?
Crazy.
And then can you deny that America was not founded on discrimination? No way.
Yeah,
so like
sure.
That's true.
For sure. And again, like I'm always hesitant to be like, this is a perfect nation. Because there is whenever I do say that like I believe in the principles of this country and I believe in this country and the people, there is an inclination to kind of always like throw like what you just did at me, where it's like, like this country's not perfect. I know it's not perfect. But I do think that it's a great working model, and I think that it's demonstrated its ability to change.
Right.
And I think
that's a great way of putting it.
And I think the principles that I believe in are what have allowed it to change over time. The women's suffrage movement, the
freedom of speech, man. It's
civil rights movement,
right?
And
the ability to dissent.
Yeah.
Right? With
absolutely.
Speech and assembly.
Absolutely.
It's so powerful.
And that's what I believe in. I don't believe in any of the racist crap.
What Americans need to realize is not just that has taken America to what place it has, but it has also taken the rest of the world to the place we are at.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
These ideas that we speak about globally, so many of them, and not just ideas but technologies, not just technologies but practices that we speak of globally were given birth in America. China has managed none of that, even though they've come at par in terms of competing on a one-on-one level.
Yeah.
But America has sort of does have this responsibility of bringing everybody up with it, with the ideas that it produces as a matter of consequence from this intellectual wrestling match that is engaged in constantly.
I agree.
I
agree.
Okay, let me ask you this. What, in an ideal world, what is the future of Slant? Is it the Vox model of future? Is it like where do we see?
I wouldn't necessarily call our ideal structure Vox-esque. That's a great question. My vision for the future right now is just reaching as many people as we can, coming up with awesome new ways of demonstrating the human experience in America, and having a vast array of content. We're doing Movements of America and we're doing The People Speak, but we want to expand. And we are currently talking about the development of an online platform. Although that perhaps is more long term, and it's something that we really have to be very responsible about from like an ethical perspective. Because anything that like involves, politics and technology right now is just, it's
all over the place.
It's all over the place.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no. So we're mainly, if we were ever to pursue that, we have to go about it from a very, very transparent and very ethical way, and we're thinking about ways we can do that. But really, what we're focused on is just our core mission, and however that will manifest over time remains to be seen. But it really is just finding ways to bring the political discourse back down. Just a few pegs down from like our Armageddon.
Sure. I truly do miss Franco, the other brain behind the project here, but I think you've done a fair enough job at earning my respect for your project.
Thank you. That means a lot.
That's not trivial at all. But let me ask you this, and I wish, again, Franco was here for this, but in the world of, as we progress, 5 years down the line, it'll be more apparent than it is now, but to be very honest, the calling's been coming for 15 years, that this world's now what we called a personal branding world. Everything's personal brands. It's not the t-shirts. Future t-shirts will not say Apple or Google any longer. They will say Ray Kurzweil and Steve Jobs and Joe Rogan and PewDiePie. They will say names of people, right? It's personal brand.
But I think, that already kind of
right. That's what I'm saying.
That's just like one step, like past what we're seeing right now.
Absolutely. My point is, now that we're progressing at a hyper speed, hyper velocity towards this content creation, personal branding world, how do you plan on toggling your content in the future? How do you plan on being Leo and not Slant, or Slant and not Leo?
I mean, to a certain extent, I feel like I'm very much connected to Slant, because I mean, it represents my beliefs about the world. I don't think I can ever wholly exist separately from it. You know, it's my baby. I feel very connected to it.
Congratulations.
Oh yeah. You know, very happy father.
Baby jokes are always in my head. Yeah.
But no, that's a great question, and I don't know whether I have an answer for that.
But that's something to think about.
Right?
That's my job. If I can make you think, if I can make you happy,
very thought provoking.
I know, man. That's my job. My job is to make my guests think, make my guests feel like they know about their project better than they did before they walked in.
You've done your job.
I hope I have, man. Is there any question you have for me?
Any questions that so I actually brought over some Slant stickers. So I guess the question that I have is whether you could find a place to put them in your beautiful. I could just grab my backpack at the end of the podcast.
I think I will use it on my laptop. Can I use a laptop sticker?
Please, yeah, please do.
High five, man. I'm glad. I would be down for any future collaborations if you have in mind, because I believe in your idea.
I would be too.
I believe in your project.
I really appreciate that, man.
I can also offer space for you at Colloquia anytime you want to come or do a workshop or any of that.
That would be awesome. You know, like let's talk about that.
Absolutely. But this has been absolutely fucking phenomenal. This is one of my favorite conversations in a while, man.
Thank you, Prakar.
We brought out some of the more interesting questions about democracy and the political scenario right now, instead of falling back on the same tropes of questions that have existed in the marketplace of ideas for long enough.
For sure.
I think you've done a phenomenal job at answering a lot of them, and I think I forgot to mention, you're also one of the biggest fans I have for my podcast, so I'm glad.
I love what you're doing, man, and I'm very, you know, I'm a very huge fan.
I am a fan of you for saying that, man. I'm flattered. Thank you so much. This has been amazing, man.
All right.
It's truly been amazing.
Thanks.